Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dill Matt Rhule, the Nebraska Cornhuskers, getting it done in the Pinstripe Bowl, finishing with a winning record. And I think, right off the bat, you can tell that meant a lot for a lot of those seniors on that football team, guys like Ty Robinson, guys like Nash. So that's a really good feeling. I think the most important conversation to have if you're a Nebraska fan is, all right, what does it look like going into 2025? I kind of view these bowl games as auditions and previews of what the 2025 season is going to be. Where I want to start is Dylan in this new Nebraska offense under Dana Holgorsen. It looks different to me. And the thing that stands out, and I'll give you a chance to kind of expand on it, there are plays that seem easier. And Matt Rhule, I think, said it best. It was a couple of weeks ago when they made the change. Not enough is happening on this offense that's easy. Dana's giving some stuff that's easy for Dylan. And that was always going to be important when you're having a true freshman start at the quarterback spot. But it's important in any good offense. Like, do you have things you can go to that you know is going to work and you know can get this offense into a rhythm? You saw that. And Nebraska only scored 20 points in this football game, but I thought the offense found a pretty dang good rhythm at times and sloppy conditions, hard to move the football. That's my biggest takeaway. I want to talk about some of the young cats on defense that I thought played some damn good football. Before we get into it, as always, feels good to talk about this Nebraska program winning a bowl game. A lot of the Nebraska fans have been rocking with us for a very long time. One of the first fan bases that really started giving us some support. That always means the world to the boys. Appreciate y'all. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, let it fly in the comment section. Dill, let's start with this Nebraska offense because that to me is what excites me the most. This offense feels and looks different with Dana Holgorsen taking over, and I think you're really excited about not only Dylan Raiola going into year two. Like, it's still to remind ourselves he's still a true freshman, but under new management with an offensive coordinator like Dana Holgorsen that has the track record of developing not only good quarterbacks but really good offenses. What excites you the most heading into 2025?
Probably just a little bit of a better ability to play to what you have, because I look like ever since they went to the Dana Holgorsen a little bit more spread out, it's not like they've stopped running the ball.
Agreed.
They've been running it from a spread. I think that fits Emmett Johnson a little bit better. I think he's had a really good kind of close to the year. So I think just playing to your personnel, and obviously the big one is getting your guys in good matchups, like getting Jamal Banks in one-on-one situations with some space. He was able to make a couple of big plays today. That kind of running back swing they were able to hit, just some plays that, again, it felt like they got to something that wasn't just like, okay, go win a tough one-on-one matchup and we'll see what
Agreed. And that's kind of what it seemed like at times without Dana running the offense. I'll start with Emmett Johnson. Dill, I thought Emmett Johnson ran the ball quite well. And we always, at least myself, have always been under the impression that Emmett Johnson was the best back. They kind of leaned towards Dante Dowdle, who I think was more of a Coach Satterfield guy in terms of, hey, we're going to play with like tight ends in line. We're going to get downhill. But at the end of the day, Dante Dowdle, to me, always struggled to make more than what was blocked for. If it was blocked for 3, he'd get 3. If it was blocked for 5, he would get 5. But the contact balance, making people miss, always it wasn't necessarily there. I thought Emmett Johnson did a really nice job when he had the opportunities to make some people miss. He did that. But when it was time to get some hard yards and just keep this offense on schedule, he was able to do that as well.
Well, he can do that, but again, it's like the Dana Holgorsen system, a little bit more spread out. Like, it fit him in his ability to make guys miss in a phone booth. That's kind of his game. It's not like run that 3 yards in a cloud of dust kind of style. Like, again, if you want to do that, maybe a Gabe Ervin would make sense. But A, I don't think that's how good offenses run anymore. And B, I think Emmett Johnson is probably the best ball carrier on this team. So the rushing attack should be kind of catered to what he's doing.
Yeah, I think to me personally, I think you got your running back one. And that was something Nebraska really struggled with all year in 2024 was finding the guy that they wanted to ride. I think you got that with Emmett Johnson coming back in 2025. Shout out Rahmir Johnson, back in his hometown. I thought ran the ball quite well, obviously got him for a touchdown. That's cool. Like, Rahmir Johnson's been through a lot. Cool to see him have some success in his last game for Nebraska. one thing I want to see, okay, offensive line real quick in my notes. Thought it was really solid. Thought it was moving people off the line of scrimmage. I believe Boston College only sat the quarterback once. And, for the most part, Dylan did a good job getting the ball out on time, but I thought there were some clean pockets in that football game. I look at the offensive line and say you got a lot of confidence in Gunnar Gatula. I think you have a lot of confidence in some of the young Nebraska offensive linemen that are in the pipeline too, like Preston Tomo and Grant Bricks. I look at it and say, to me, feeling pretty good about where the offensive line is heading into 2025. One thing that you want to see maybe get addressed in the offseason, I think Nebraska might have already addressed it. The broadcaster said it, and I thought I agreed with it. Finding that wide receiver that can routinely win vertically. They got their guy in Dane Key, and so that one thing that you think kind of missing in this offense, especially with how well Dylan threw a lot of good deep balls there. I thought the wide receivers maybe could help him out a little bit. You got your premier deeper third wide receiver in Dane Key, and I want to see Ja'Cory Barney just continue to get more touches. He's, to me, by far the most juiced up offensive player for Nebraska. Good things happen when he gets the football.
And he gives them access to some easier stuff, like some higher percentage stuff. I did feel like for maybe part of that first quarter, first half of that football game, it did feel like maybe you were throwing the ball deep too much. There wasn't enough high percentage stuff. I feel like I looked at you like, can we just like get something easy? Because everything that felt like they were trying to push it, and you want to see them be able to push the ball, but you kind of said it. I think there's a combination of not exactly having the wide out room you probably need aside from Jamal Banks, and also like, again, you have a guy like Ja'Cory Barney. You have some really, even a Jalen Boyd got into a little bit. Like you have some guys who I think you can get some easier stuff to underneath, and then probably open something up over the top if they bring safeties down to kind of deal with it.
Agreed. Higher percentage stuff. You wanted to see more of it. I'm with you. Ja'Cory Barney gives you that ability to, hey, we're just going to get the ball to him quick. One, you get Dylan in a rhythm. And two, like anytime Ja'Cory Barney has the football in his hands, like you can change the game with it. There's not a ton of guys on Nebraska you can say that with. Ja'Cory Barney is going to be that guy for Nebraska over the next couple of years. Defensive side of the football, one, really good situational defense. Red zone defense, that's kind of what won you the football game in this case. Shout out to Ty and Nash. I am going to miss those two playing for Nebraska. They've been a blast to watch. I do think the future is pretty bright on the defensive line. Now, I wouldn't mind seeing Nebraska address the depth on the inside because I do think that still might be a problem. Out on the edge, Cam Lenhart, Willis McGahee, I thought was playing some good football. Keona Davis. You got some young guys coming up in the pipeline, especially coming off the edge. And Matt Rhule's continued to talk about this. Hey, we got to figure out a way to impact the passer with our front four. We don't want to rely on sending pressure all the time. I thought it was one of the biggest improvements Nebraska made from 2023 to 2024. I look at it and say, feel pretty good about what that Nebraska pass rush can be heading into the 2025 year.
Yeah, and one thing I would have been really happy with as a Nebraska fan is Willis McGahee kind of looking like he's starting to get ready to go and play meaningful snaps, because you look like he probably has a little bit of a different level of talent, let's say,
Agreed.
than the past defensive lineman for this Nebraska team. And another young guy, I thought, Vincent Shavers. Like, again, another guy that was playing the part, looked like, okay, if he kind of continues to progress at the rate he's going, you're going to have a really dynamic middle linebacker, another position that I don't know that Nebraska's exactly have. Like you've gotten a lot from John Bullock. I think he's played really well, but he's just not the athlete that Vincent Shavers. I don't think he gives you as much upside. So you had a couple of young players play really good. And then one more guy, Ochoa, off the edge. Wasn't really totally familiar with his game, number 94. He kind of had some interesting reps too. So again, much more of a developmental piece. I don't know if he's going to be a high impact guy next year with guys like Williams Nwaneri coming in and some of the other defensive line or portal targets they've landed. But he's a guy that I'm kind of going to be looking for now in spring games and in spot duty to see what he can develop into, because he had some really nice reps for a really under recruited young player.
So circling back to Vincent Shavers, Nebraska's had some good off ball linebackers. I don't think they've had a guy like this in a really long time. Like the juice, the ability for him to close the space between himself and the ball carrier, it's kind of next level. And you can see the wheels starting to turn, and the game is starting to slow down for him, which is normally that sticking point for a lot of young linebackers. That's to me an All-American caliber guy, and Vincent Shavers. And that's when you have that guy on defense, it can make up for a lot of deficiencies. I
And
cannot wait.
I thought the defensive coordinator did a good job of getting to some things with those guys, with McGahee,
Yeah,
with
yeah.
Sanders, with some well-timed blitzes that, again, kind of hit. I don't know that you totally like. I know Matt Rhule wanted to not have to rely on blitzing so much, but when you can get a well-timed blitz and make it happen, like that's still a formidable weapon. You get that fumble that creates a turnover off of it, like those are plays that are important. I think they did a good job of timing those up when they were going to hit them and being opportunistic. And they did make some big plays with those linebackers coming in pressure.
I think Matt Rhule did a brilliant job kind of preparing Nebraska for life after Tony White. I think you kind of knew the days in Lincoln would be numbered. We knew that going back to last year when he was getting talked about as a future head coach. There's not going to be a big transition. Now, I think Matt Rhule did a really good job preparing Nebraska for that. Donovan Jones, I'll put my hand up. I've never heard of him before. I feel like I do a good job following this Nebraska team. True freshman, your redshirted this year, came in, was excellent out there on the boundary. Sayer Wright's going to be a stud for Nebraska next year. I think you were looking for that other boundary cornerback. You went out and grabbed Andrew Marshall from Idaho. You have a guy in Amari Sanders who I think a lot of Nebraska fans are excited about. You couldn't have another year of Malcolm Hartzog playing boundary cornerback, right? The depth was a problem. Malcolm Hartzog, I think, can be a solid football player, but he ain't going to be solid on the boundary. He's 5'9". He's my height. I was excited about what you saw from Donovan Jones. He plays the ball in the air really well for a young kid. And now it allows you to use Malcolm Hartzog in a better spot. Like, that's just same thing with Buford. Like, we knew those guys weren't boundary cornerbacks. Nebraska was, for lack of better terms, kind of forced to go with them there. You're starting to develop some young depth in the boundary cornerback spot, which I think is really big. Dill, we'll finish on this. What does Nebraska need to address in 2025 to take that next step?
If they could get a really pretty solid tight end, I think that's a position I kind of look at that. Again, I don't know that they've used it properly at times. I don't know that they've had that guy. Harburg's kind of interesting for sure.
I like him a lot, by the
I
way.
do wonder if that's a position because I feel like got a couple of really good receivers come in, had addressed that interior defensive line. I don't know that they're going to be done there, but you brought in a couple of those. That tight end spot to me is one that I might be looking at if there's a guy that pops in like a Riley Williams from Miami, let's say, and see if they can upgrade that spot because I feel like they can get more from it. That's kind of where I'm
at. I don't know if I understand where you're coming from. I do think that answer could be Carter Nelson if he puts on some weight. I think that, to me, that sounds like the plan. Carter Nelson, we want to get him involved, but we probably can't get him involved as an inline blocker yet. So he plays on the outside. He wasn't an early enrollee, if I don't believe. And so now you're getting that full winter workout. He's got that frame, man. Like, he can shoot up to 240 in a heartbeat. I would think Carter Nelson is going to be a bigger factor at that position. To me, I know but the special teams, you got some guys coming in the portal, which I know is not national media headline, but that's costing Nebraska football games and almost cost them in this football game. You got to clean it up. And if there's a switch at the special team spot, look, we've seen Matt Rhule not be afraid to make some changes. I think you got to look at that because you can't have special teams that are consistently putting you at a disadvantage seemingly every single game. And that has been what's happened with Nebraska the last couple of years. That's what I'm looking at. Though this team's not far away. When you got a quarterback like Dillon, who I expect to take a massive jump in 2025, you can win at a very high level. Wasn't the prettiest game. You finish with a winning record. It's a very, very good positive momentum boost heading into winter workouts and spring practice. We'll close it out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it again to the Nebraska fans, a lot of which have been rocking with the boys for a while. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.